What's good, me YouTube familia? We're back. We're going to be talking about UFC 296 today, and honestly, there isn't too much to cover with this card, because even though it was the last pay-per-view of the year, it wasn't that great, if we're going to be completely honest. Let's start from the main event and go down to every fight that matters to be talked about, which, newsflash, is only two outside of the main, the full main card. Leon Edwards defeats Colby Covington via UD, winning the first 4 rounds pretty easily and essentially giving Colby the 5th by trying to out-grapple him. I appreciated that he was going for finishes in certain positions. I appreciated that he was going for the takedown. He was actually fighting in those grappling exchanges to prove that he's better than Colby. But dude, with how boring that performance was, knowing what Colby said to him at the press conference about his dad, and then, I don't know, it's just, that's crazy to me. You don't bust his jaw for that. And on top of that, on the flip side, Colby should have fought like he did in the 5th round from the get-go. It's in the 5th he showed you a taste of what he maybe could have done, but didn't do that at all. In the first round, he fought so gun-shy, it was bizarre. He was just backing up, didn't try to take the center of the octagon. It almost looked like he was afraid, or just maybe not afraid is the right word. It looked like he was caught off guard by how quick Leon was, and he wasn't looking to get countered. I don't know, maybe he just really respected the power, maybe he really respected the precision. Maybe Colby's just not as good as everybody has thought he has been for the past couple of years. I think it came down to a close style matchup against Usman. This is how I feel about it. Usman was the dominant champion. He really could take on multiple styles and find a way to beat them all. Colby is not that. He got his title shot based off being a mouthpiece and putting together a win streak against people that were out of their prime and waiting on fights and shit, typical welterweight shit. And then he had a good matchup against Usman twice, where he still lost handily, but he had a good matchup. I mean, in the first round it was close. The first fight I actually had Colby winning it, except for the cheap shit that Usman did and the bad stoppage. I'll actually side with Colby there. But other than that, it's really just he had some close-ish losses to one dominant champion, and then everybody thought he was better than he is. And I'm one of those people. But now it's been proven with who he's taken on and how he's lost to them. Colby just doesn't belong at the top. He should honestly stay active and fight Wonderboy like he was speaking about in the post-fight presser. But he doesn't have because we know he doesn't have the balls to fight Shovot, even though that's where I feel like the UFC should go. They should feed him to Shovot. But, have him match with Wonderboy on UFC 300, and considering his terrible performance, considering him getting torn apart by the MMA community for his comments about Leon's dad, and considering that Trump walked out of his post-fight speech when he was in the cage, I'm sure Colby knows that he needs to fight soon or he risks losing a lot of his true supporters. And then the co-main event, Pantoja versus Royval, was a pretty lackluster fight where the champion simply dictated where the fight would be each round. And unfortunately for the fans, he chose to take it to the ground and just hold positions for the most part. A lot of back control. He would be trying to chase subs, but it didn't have that same intensity. And honestly, I don't know why Royval getting his first title shot didn't, I don't know, just do more. I know that's easier said than done, and I'm the one sitting on the couch critiquing an MMA fighter, but at the same time, if you're in a title fight and this is probably the one of the only ones you're gonna get, don't you go hard? Don't you fight for that shot? I don't know. That's just me personally. Either way, I love both these fighters, and I was honestly surprised it went to a decision. Both these fighters have a crazy finishing rate, and their first fight was wild. I didn't see this fight going anywhere but being a finish, but you know what? Things have changed. Both fighters have matured a bit, so I can give respects to that. And at the end of the day, I'm an MMA fan, and I can appreciate seeing somebody like Pantoja find a way to just absolutely dominate a fighter like Royval, who's dangerous everywhere. So that I appreciate, but come on, the main event and the co-main event were just overall really boring fights, and I wish the fighters would have taken into account. Yeah, I know your legacy and your career, all that matters, but at the same time, it's the last card of the year. Do something exciting. Go for some shit, please. Pantoja, I think he should stay active. He's actually been doing that, and I appreciate that a lot. And I think he can just continue to prop up flyweight as one of those better divisions. It's crazy knowing that this division was almost cut out of the UFC, and they have actually produced some of the greatest fights in the last couple of years. The feature fight of the night, Shovot versus Wonderboy. I don't even need to put a picture of what happened in it, because it was pretty much just a clinch fest and a drowning in the grapple game by Shovot. He would dominate in the clinch, drown Thompson to the mat essentially, and then latched up a choke. He had him in such a dangerous position too, where he had his arm behind his back, and he could do a straight arm bar or flip and transition to a real a full arm bar Or he could also use that leverage, keep walking Wonder Boy's like opposite shoulder to the mat, and then use that to isolate his neck and get a choke. It was beautiful to watch. And as somebody who has grown up grappling his whole life, I'm super fascinated with people that are able to establish dominant control like that and then find unique different types of submissions. I love that shit. So that was awesome. Shovot is the real deal. I just want to see this man get his title shot at this point. 18-0 with all finishes. Like, he's the real deal. Then we have Paddy Pimblett defeating Tony Ferguson 30-27, pretty easily winning each round with the striking and ground control. It was a really, really fucking boring fight. And it sucked because in the third round, Paddy looked completely gassed out. But Tony is just not the same fighter, so once he got taken down in the third, he didn't have the urgency to get to his feet. He really just sat there thinking I can bust him up and maybe latch up a sub, and it didn't work, bro. Josh Emmett delivers one of the nastiest KOs of all time with a right hand from hell that shuts Bryce Mitchell off for a few minutes. Absolutely crazy to watch live, dude. Bryce Mitchell actually was out for a couple minutes, spazzing on the ground and shit. And when he came to, he was so confused, asking what happened. You know, that's typical. But then when he tried to stand up, for the longest, he just couldn't get his feet under him. Like, his balance was just completely out. And he said on Instagram the day after, he said that he's super grateful for Josh Emmett not landing up any follow-up because he truly believes that it would have killed him. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Josh Emmett, pound for pound, one of the hardest hitters of all time. We have Cody No Love doing what he's supposed to do. Flatlines Brian Kelleher with a fury of hands in the first round. It was looking dicey. He was getting chopped up at the leg and the calf. And after like 3, I just knew, like, fuck, if this makes it into the second round, this really could become a Kelleher, like, upset. And anybody that has Kelleher on their parlay or, like, straight bet is going to be losing their shit. But you know what? Cody comes through and he finds the right shots, puts Kelleher face down on the mat, wins me and my homies a ton of money, which is just, you know, hype. I love making the boys some extra bread, turning my words into gold. Cody back in the win column too. I mean, not back in the win column, back on a win streak. And then one of my favorite fighters and hands down one of my favorite journeymen in the UFC, point blank period, Andre Fili, beams Lucas Almeida for the TKO stoppage. I think it was the first round. I don't exactly remember because I was doing something for the first 3 fights of the prelims at the house. But yeah, overall, one of my favorite fighters of all time. He comes from Sacramento, or he trains out of Sacramento, which is right by where I live. I've always just been a big fan of these alpha male guys, but a couple of them, like Andre Fili, they're just super relatable. And he's just somebody that's like, he's so fucking good. He's not, I don't know if I would say he's a gatekeeper. I think he's a little bit better than that. He's so good, and he has such close fights with these featherweight prospects that end up making names for themselves, like Sadiq Yusuf, like Max Holloway, actually, from way back in the day. There's somebody else as of recent that's on my mind, the British MMA fighter. I don't remember his name at the moment, but he just fights everybody, and he usually wins. Sometimes he doesn't, but you know, he's really one of the best, and I hope that he can make a name for himself even more in 2024. But that's gonna, you know, wrap up my 2023. I mean, not my 2023. That's going to wrap up UFC 296, but it's also going to wrap up my coverage of the UFC for 2023. This is the last video I'm going to be posting on the year, aside from my MMA recap, which will be coming out probably after Christmas, before New Year, something like that, just to, like, you know, be part of the end of the year vibes. Thank you all for the support. It blows my mind that I have almost 1,000 people subscribed watching my content. It truly means the world to me, and it's just crazy thinking that I started with 0 in January, and now I have this many people watching me. It's awesome. And I'm getting back into training MMA, actually starting tonight. My dream's always been to be a world champion in the UFC, and I knew if I made a YouTube channel and studied every card, it would just immerse me in this game even more. This year I laid the foundation. 2024, I'm going to build on everything I've created this year, and in 2025, I promise you the name I9s will be known around the MMA world. Once again, thank you all for giving my content a tune in. Happy holidays, and let's all hope for even more stacked cards in the UFC in 2024.